for logging in and seeing some beautiful faces on the screen here today. We're going to give it about 5 more minutes and allow others to log in. Stacy, do you mind sending the link to, actually, I will do that here. Mark Moriarty.
Mute.
All right, I've been on mute. Apologies. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining. That was my test. Thank you all for joining. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Outstanding, outstanding. Thank you all for joining our panel discussion this evening in partnership with the National Urban League, the Urban League of the Central Carolinas, and Beta Delta Boule of Sigma Phi Phi fraternity. We've got Mark joining us. Thanks for joining us. All right, so my name is Yandrik Prazan. I am an organizing consultant with the National Urban League. We've rolled out a national civic engagement campaign called Reclaim Your Vote, geared towards educating and galvanizing voters to participate in this year's election and to make their voices heard on the national and local level. On the local level, we've got issues like affordable housing, neighborhood improvements, quality healthcare, zoning, education, teachers' pay. Transportation policies like light rail and public busing are on the ballot locally as well. So what do we want to know? What types of opportunities are being created for our disadvantaged communities and individuals? How do we select the right candidate to represent our interests on the city, county, and state levels? Will our votes even make it to the post office and be counted at the Board of Elections? These types of issues impact us directly on a daily basis. And these are the questions that we want to get answered from our esteemed and highly experienced panel. So let me start by pulling in Teddy. Teddy, go ahead, brother.
Well, thank you, Yandrik. My name is Teddy McDaniel, and I proudly serve as the president and CEO of the Urban League here in Charlotte, North Carolina, Urban League of the Central Carolinas. And I see my fearless leader, our national leader, Mark Morial, on the call. Mark, welcome. It is a pleasure to have you. And we appreciate your leadership so much. I know we're going to hear a lot from you tonight. Let me just say that it is a critical time for all of our citizens, not only in Charlotte, North Carolina, but in cities, in urban and rural areas around the country. We do believe that this is the most important vote of our lifetime. And yes, we say that every 2 years or every 4 years. But there are critical issues that have to be finalized, and there are policies that need to be changed. We are about economic empowerment, And let me just start by saying we all know that we're in a triple pandemic right now. We've got a public health crisis that everyone on this panel and in the community is dealing with. That led, unfortunately, to an economic crisis. And for those of us in underserved communities, we've been dealing with disparities for decades, and we're trying to turn around. And now we have, with the death of George Floyd and so many others that have lost their lives, we're now in a racial pandemic. Many would say that it is a double or triple earthquake. And so part of our role as a community advocate, your community organization in Charlotte, North Carolina, is to be the #1 advocate for underserved communities. What does that mean? Tonight, you're going to hear about a lot of issues. And with Yandric's help and Mark's leadership, you're going to hear more about the Reclaim Your Vote effort. Reclaim Your Vote, protest to power. So there are 5 steps I want you to be aware of. And some have happened, but we want to add some clarity to that tonight. The first, of course, is registering to vote. And yes, the official date to register was October 9th. But in North Carolina, you all need to know that you can go to the polls and register during the early voting period from October 15th until October 31st. So don't be fooled. Registration is not over. Take your ID. You can go to the polls. You have to get registered. The second we'll talk a lot about tonight is checking your voting status. There'll be a lot of questions about the ability to mail in votes safely, knowing where your polls are, knowing your location, knowing what the rules are. Again, we are in an early voting stage, and we want people to vote as early as possible. The fourth is education. There are lots of candidates. North Carolina is a state where every judge is elected instead of appointed. That's important. There are lots of judges on the ballot. We want you to vote the entire ballot and educate yourself, not only on the candidates, but the issues. Where do you stand on education? Where do you stand on jobs? Where do you stand on affordable housing? And you should question these candidates and read the material. And fifth, of course, is mobilization and turnout. It is all about voting, voting, voting. We're delighted to have this esteemed panel and be in partnership with a number of organizations. I want to thank Michael Dickerson because his job is 24 hours a day as head of our local board of elections here in Mecklenburg County. We're always excited to have sitting public servants, and of course, Mark Morial with the National Urban League. So I'm excited about having you all tonight, and let's get everybody to the polls safely. The last thing I want to emphasize, as much as we are fighting for every vote to count, we will not stand for voter suppression. We know from 2016, and much of the research has been done with the National Urban League and other research organizations, that there was a concerted effort to suppress votes, not only in North Carolina, but in states around the country. And so we now have a voter line. If you see any impressionable issues of voting, we want you to dial 866-OUR-VOTE. That's 866-OUR-VOTE. We have lawyers and advocates on standby. You hear from a lot of politicians about being watched at poll stations. And we have fought too long and too hard for our vote not to count. So we are certainly want to be vocal about the anti-voter suppression efforts. And remember, 866-OUR-VOTE. And with that, Yandric, I'll turn it over to you, and I look forward to this discussion this evening.
That was well said. Thank you very much for all of that, for those points there. Let me go through a proper introduction, introduce all of our panelists here, and we'll jump right into these questions. First, we have got Brandon Lofton, who is a member of the North Carolina House of Representatives, representing the state's 104th district. Prior to this role, Brandon served on the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Housing Advisory Board, chaired the board of the Council for Children's Rights, chaired the City of Charlotte's Disparity Study Advisory Committee, and helped revise the city's small business program. Brandon is a partner with the law firm Robinson Bradshaw, where he focuses his practice in the area of public finance. We've got Michael Dickerson, who is currently the director of elections. He's got a heavy burden to carry at this point right now, and he's working 24 hours full time, so thank you. Prior to coming to Charlotte, he was the Federal Election Commission he He was with the Federal Election Commission as a Deputy Assistant Staff Director. Currently, he is a member of the International Association of Government Officials, the Election Center, and North Carolina's Directors of Elections Association. Larkin Eggleston currently serves on Charlotte City Council. He was elected in 2017 as the District 1 representative and is serving his second term. He served as a delegate to the 2016 Democratic National Convention. Currently, he serves on the North Carolina Advisory Committee for the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition and the Advisory Board for Central Piedmont Community College's Culinary Arts Program. And we've got Teddy McDaniel, who is currently the president and CEO of the National Urban League of Central Carolina. He comes to Charlotte after leading the Urban League in Austin, Texas for 5 years. Prior to joining the National Urban League, Teddy spent 15 years in the financial service industry, concentrating in the franchise business sector as an assistant vice president for GE Capital. He serves on the board of directors for the Austin Revitalization Authority, Austin Convention and Visitors Bureau, the University of Texas at Austin's Diversity Advisory Council, and he's also the vice chair of Austin's Airport Advisory Commission. So lastly, we've got a special guest with us, which is Mark Morial, who is the president of our National Urban League and manages and covers all of our affiliates across the nation. Mark, do you want to give us just a quick intro? You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can.
Okay,
Welcome,
guys.
Mark.
Yeah, Yandrick, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Teddy McDaniel, thank you for your leadership in Charlotte and certainly previously in Austin. Appreciate the energy you've brought to the Reclaim Your Vote initiative. And I want to thank all of the other people who are with us, Brandon and Larkin and Michael, for being a part of this discussion. And we certainly want to thank Teddy, the Urban League of the Central Carolinas, and Sigma Pi Phi.
All right. Looks like Mark. All right, it's our technology. We'll give him a chance to get back in.
Right.
Okay. All right, we'll give him a chance to get back in. So Teddy, we're going to dive right in. Teddy, you had some fantastic points. I want to direct this to Michael Dickerson and the entire group. I'm going to bounce around some questions and feel free to chime in, comment on any and every question that you feel that the spirit moves you. So please join in, and we'll leave the last 10 minutes of this call to questions to respond to the chats in the chat box there. Mark, are you back? Okay. Teddy, if you don't mind messaging Mark and just let him know.
No problem. Keep going. You're fine. Once he pops up here, we'll give his comments.
Michael, we talked about voter suppression and what's happening at the polls. Just give us an idea of the security of what we're doing to handle any type of intimidation at the polls. I'm not hearing many, if any, reports of that happening so far. What are we doing to circumvent that?
Sure, and that's a great question, because that is something we ask ourselves every year. And one of the goals that we set is what's in our North Carolina General Statute. And that states that our job of our elections officials, be it a site coordinator, a chief judge on election day, their main job is to keep that polling place open and unobstructed. And that is our challenge, and that is our requirement from everybody. They may go so far as to call local law enforcement in if there is some sort of issue, and we will be glad to call them in, and we have called them in the past. in previous elections. But we have not heard of any issues. We are a group that is ready for anything, but we make sure we don't have anything. We have spent hours with our local law enforcement. We have a great sheriff and CMPD here in Charlotte that has always offered their assistance, and anything that they can do for us, they are already and willing to be there. There's an emergency operations center, and it's not just for things like intimidation, but it's for things like water main break, power outages, all of these things that could stop you from voting. We have a group that's working with us to make sure that we're aware of everything, and we applaud the city of Charlotte for everything that they're doing, and the county for everything they're doing to make sure we keep it safe. The biggest thing that I got this year, as far as what would stop me from going to the polls, was not necessarily an intimidation. It was the COVID-19 response. What are you doing, Michael, to keep COVID-19 from spreading throughout the community? And we are doing our best at this point in time to make certain that we do the 3 W's. We follow the recommendations of the CDC. We wash our hands, we wear our masks, and we all wait 6 feet apart. So if we all do that, and our sites are socially distanced, I think we'll keep everybody safe, and we won't have to let COVID-19 intimidate us from going to the polls.
You know, it's a good and a bad, a gift and a curse, in some ways, that we're, regardless of your COVID symptoms, of how you feel, you are by right allowed to come in and vote. You're not allowed to, poll workers are not allowed to turn away any individuals that appear to have COVID symptoms and what have you. Can you speak to that?
Sure. If you are experiencing COVID symptoms, or if you are experiencing COVID-19, yes, you may still vote. And in North Carolina, we actually have a curbside process, which is fantastic, because if you can drive to the site yourself, but I'm still experiencing symptoms, drive to the site. Somebody will come out there and say, we can vote you from the curb. We'll bring you out a ballot, let you fill out the ballot. You'll sign the ballot or sign an affidavit, fill out your ballot, and that vote will count just as everybody else. I suspect we all want to be responsible. We all want to be ones that do not spread the COVID-19 to somebody else. So our goal would be to vote you from the curb, and that way you would never have to be in contact with anybody else. And obviously, we still have a mail-in voting process too, up through a week from yesterday, through the 27th of October at 5 o'clock. You may still request and receive an absentee ballot by mail, but that time is getting shorter, so make sure you do that soon.
Michael,
As somebody who has gone and voted on Friday of last week at the Bojangles Coliseum, or as Michael corrected me, the Boplex, not only was I in and out in 15 minutes from the time I got there, but I can vouch for the fact that the safety protocols they've got in place are they're excellent, and I felt completely safe there. I felt like the poll workers were completely safe there, and they make sure everybody's distanced. You get the little pen that you can use on the touch screens. You get to keep the pen as your souvenir this year, which everybody's enjoying taking selfies of. Everything about it was incredibly well thought out, incredibly well executed, efficient and safe.
I'll point out, Michael, you mentioned the absentee ballots. There's been a lot of controversy because of the issues with the post office earlier in the year. Can you talk about, because I want to give your team credit, people are allowed to request their mail-in ballot, fill it out, get that witness, and then bring it down to the Board of Elections. And that's something I did, had no problems with it, had your staff on site ready, and a lot of seniors have to deal with this. We deal with a lot of churches, and we're trying to help make certain they know that there is an option to come to the Board of Elections. So can you talk about that process?
Sure. In North Carolina, we're allowed to request an absentee ballot. And the other thing to keep in mind, just because I request an absentee ballot doesn't mean I have to vote it.
That's right.
I may decide at some point that I did this myself. I wanted to see how the process worked. I ordered an absentee ballot. It was mailed to my house. Perfect. Great. It came to my house. I received notification that it came to my house from an intelligent mail barcode. Thank you, Representative Lofton. And that was fantastic. I said, this is cool. I'm not going to vote it. I want to go vote at the Spectrum Center in person. I want to go see the Hornets. So I drove down to the stadium, parked free across the street from the Spectrum Center, went in, voted, and came right back out. But what I could have also done was I could have driven to the Spectrum Center and walked in and dropped off my absentee ballot already voted at the Spectrum Center. They would have taken it at any of my early voting sites. You don't have to drive all the way down to the Board of Elections because, as you know, Teddy, when you were down here, parking's tight. I think I need to get the county to buy the rest of the building and put up a 4-deck parking garage so we can accommodate everybody. But parking is tight. You could drive it to East Meck High School and drop it off there. They'll take it from you and they'll log it in. And the key thing to remember is too, you can also always put it in the mail. We have had a great working relationship here in Mecklenburg County with our post office here. We actually know the people at Scott Futrell, the postal center out there. We are also big believers in the 11th commandment that thou shalt not criticize other government offices. So we will definitely, we're always happy to work with our folks at the post office here locally, and they do great. They literally will, what they call, sweep the floor and make sure they have all of our ballots in. To the tune of already, I think I've received 86,000 absentee ballots already by mail. So yes, there are options if you so desire.
Michael, so you talked about the process and how these mail-in vote, how these ballots are coming in from the mail. They are coming in. Talk about the process when it comes in at night. What do you guys do? How do you process it?
But what we do, the first thing we do is obviously we date stamp it so that we know where we date stamp it so we know when it was received in our office. And what we do from there is after we receive it, we inspect it to make sure it's completed and the outside envelope is completed. And then I present it to my 5-member local board. And they say, okay, Michael, these are good. You can run these through the scanner and process these ballots at starting the 5th Tuesday before the election. We started back in September 29th, having board meetings. And my board said, yep, those are good. Run them through the scanner. And after we run them through the scanner, we don't tally the results, but we put that information on a thumb drive, seal the thumb drive, seal the ballots, and secure them in our vault here at the office. And then after they finish all of these ballots on 2:00 on election day, my board will say, okay, Michael, retrieve the thumb drives and read those through our election night reporting system. And that will have us the results for all the absentee ballots by mail starting we won't present them until 7:30, but they will start the process at 2:00, and we will be ready to go at 7:30 with the absentee ballot by mail numbers.
Should we be concerned about any reductions or slow processing at the from the mail office?
No, I don't think so.
You're exactly where you need to be.
I don't think we should be concerned about it. I think we're in great shape as we sit right now. We're getting them in. We're getting those through. One of the things North Carolina does
Give up. Huh?
also says that if you have any absentee ballot and it is date stamped, that has got
Let's
the
try
postmark of
something real
November
quick, and if
3rd
it
on
doesn't
it,
work, then
I
would
will
say
count
so,
that
but-
ballot.
So at
And
the bottom,
Representative Lofton, you have to tell me where we are
at
on
the top
today's
right,
court
you should
cases.
see two
I will either
squares
count it by
that
if
are
I
right next
receive
to
it
each
by
other.
Friday at
way
5
up, yeah.
o'clock after the election, or the
Can you tap
second
on that, sir?
Thursday at 5 o'clock after
Okay,
the
just
election. So if it's
Alrighty.
postmarked
Now, to the
election day,
left,
my
you
hope
should
is I
see
can get
another
those out
StreamYard
and be able to tally
link,
those.
right, sir?
I see one.
Thank you.
I see two.
Mark,
I
do
see
you,
one
Mark,
more.
do you-
Can you press the X
Mark?
on the top left?
Awesome. Thanks very much, Michael. And so in terms of, we've heard of the ballots being rejected. Just specifically go into making sure, what do we need to know to make sure that our ballot is not rejected?
Right, sure. And what we don't use the term rejected just yet because we're still live with ballots. The key term is two things. If your ballot is not signed by you, which we're talking the container return envelope has to be signed by the voter, and it has to be witnessed, and the witness has to sign their name, print their name, and print their address. If on the outside, if none of that is available, if the voter did not sign it, then we will send that voter out something called a cure affidavit. And that we've already sent those out to voters because we can't accept that ballot at that point in time. What we're trying to do is make that ballot good so we can accept it. Make that application or that return envelope good so we can accept it. I don't care how anybody votes it. We don't really care about that. But we want to make sure that it's good. So we're going to send you a cure affidavit that you sign and send back to us, and then we'll be able to accept it. If your ballot in the recent court case that just finished up, I think it was Monday, the court case stated, the judge ruled that if the ballot was not signed by a witness, that I will need to spoil that ballot and send a new ballot to the voter and say, hey, you didn't have it signed by the witness. You need to have the witness sign it after you vote this new ballot, or you may go vote early or go vote on election day. So we'll offer some options to the voter there.
So that process of that being sent back to the voter, how much time is that going to take? Is that going to take them beyond November 3rd?
Nope. I had about 1,000 and got the order yesterday. We sent them all out today.
Got it.
We are in the business of serving the voter. We're not in the business of stopping or slowing anything. All of us are working long hours and weekends just for one thing. That's to make sure the voter. And it sounds harsh, but as I looked today, I have put over 194,000 ballots in the mail stream. 194,000. That is close to 5 times what I put in 4 years ago. We put in 40,000 ballots, and no, it wasn't even 40,000, close to 36,000 4 years ago. And then 4 years ago, we had 25,000 people vote by mail. Granted, we weren't in a pandemic, but 25,000 people vote by mail. Now we're up to 86,000. 3.5 times that many people have already voted by mail than we did 4 years ago. So a lot of it's right, and a lot of it is I harken back to House Bill 1169 and Representative Lofton. That was a great work. It was a nearly unanimous vote in our North Carolina General Assembly, and that doesn't come easy. But it was fantastic to have because they eliminated a witness requirement. They dropped it from 2 to 1. They redesigned the envelope. They developed a portal where you can go online and say, okay, you can easily register to vote, simple stuff. So it was just fantastic to see. So we are in good shape. We've just got a huge crop of people that have never voted absentee by mail before. I'll shut up. I'm sorry. We see Mr. Moriel back.
Hey,
Mr.
can you all hear
Moriel.
me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining.
Look, I apologize for technical problems. I don't know what end it's on, but I'm here and I'm back. And I certainly want to thank Teddy, you, Yandrick, and all of the people on the panel. I just want to say this. I've been watching the news, and they just interrupted with a special report where the FBI just announced that both Iran and Russia are actively interfering with the election and may have access to voter rolls. This is obviously not a surprise. What is surprising is that the FBI has announced this information, but where it plays in is our determination as voters and as Americans to vote and have our votes counted has to be strong and absolutely insistent in this election. And one of the reasons why we launched the Reclaim Your Vote campaign is to push back against suppression, to push back against apathy, to push back against intimidation, and to push back against any efforts to make it more difficult for people to vote. It's good to hear Michael talk about the efforts in North Carolina to improve access to the ballot box. And this is what we need in states across the nation. We need to make it easier. We need to make it simpler. We need to make it hassle-free for people to cast the most important thing we have in a democracy, and that is indeed the right to vote. And I've been disturbed greatly by this new personage of what I call James and Mary Crow, who are the grandsons and granddaughters of Jim Crow, who've come up with all sorts of new schemes: voter ID, voter purges, interference with the post office, you name it, anything, Russian interference, foreign involvement, misinformation, disinformation, to try to discourage and intimidate people from voting. I'm going to ask everyone who may be in earshot and ask you all to join me in these last 2 weeks. Let's send a message to all people to not be intimidated, not to be thwarted, to stand in line all day, all night, to go on a unicycle, tricycle, motorcycle, or a skateboard, put on a hazmat suit, a helmet, a batting helmet, a football helmet, or hockey pads. Whatever it takes, we must be counted. And we've all got to push and we've got to fight, because this is a chance for us to make a statement about American democracy. Large, robust voter participation is a good sign for American democracy. And so the National Urban League in this election cycle, in addition to Reclaim Your Vote, has brought litigation against the Postal Service. It's unimaginable that anyone would have said to me at the beginning of this cycle that we'd have to sue the Postal Service to ensure that people who vote by mail, the Postal Service, where my relatives and family members have worked with pride and distinction for many, many decades and generations, that somehow somebody would be trying to thwart the effort of the poll. Be that as it may, we cannot be thwarted and we cannot be stopped. And those states who have done the right thing to expand access, we have to lift up their voting models so that other states will indeed pay attention. We cannot allow democracy to be fettered, frittered, shaved, thwarted, suppressed, marginalized, or diminished in any way in 21st century America.
Yandrick, I'd just like to request that we all get notification of when and where we can see Mayor Morial riding a unicycle and a hazmat suit to vote. I'd like to be there for that.
Yeah, both. Trust me, I've seen it already.
That would be a sight. We'd love to see that.
Larkin. You got me.
Larkin, what are your thoughts on what Mark just mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people need to feel confident, and the fact of the matter is that most counties in North Carolina might not have someone as strong as Michael Dickerson. Most states in this country might not have a General Assembly that, despite their differences, can come together to try to improve voter confidence and voter access. So don't think that every one of the 100 counties in North Carolina has somebody like Michael Dickerson. They might not. I'm sure Michael would vouch for many, or if not all of them. They're his colleagues and his peers. We've got one of, if not the best, at this here in Mecklenburg County. And Michael, we're greatly appreciative of Lord knows how many hours you're putting in right now. You do great work. Your team does great work. But there are parts of this country where to the mayor's point, people will feel intimidated to go to the polls. We are a blue county. And I know this is a nonpartisan discussion, but it's not uncomfortable for a person of color to vote in Mecklenburg County, or it damn sure shouldn't be, because this is a place that they have probably more of a sense of trust in this system. But if you're in rural parts of Mississippi or Alabama, you might not have that same confidence walking to the polls and wanting to cast a ballot for a certain candidate or a certain party. And so there are places, and not to say that it doesn't happen in North Carolina or even at times in Mecklenburg County, but there are places where there are still, to Mr. Morial's point, new versions of old Jim Crow type voter suppression, some of it legal and some of it not. None of it should be legal. And so I think that we've got a long way to go in this country to make sure that the right to vote that people fought so hard for is something we shouldn't still have to fight for it today, but we do. And we've got to make sure that everybody in this city, this county, this state, this country understands the importance of getting out there and voting, and feels confident in and safe in doing so, and feels confident in the fact that it's going to be counted and counted fairly.
Outstanding. Let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about candidates on the ballot. I want to make sure that we cover as much as possible during this hour. I want to switch to you, Brandon. Brandon, can you discuss the division? As you know, with this Reclaim Your Vote campaign, we're energizing, informing voters, making sure that they are participating in this year's election from a national level down to their local city, county, state level. Can you discuss the division between the city, county, and state?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I do that, let me just jump on and pile on and just say I've spent a fair amount of time in the last week or so at early vote sites. And I can tell you firsthand, I've been to a few of them. I spent hours in front of them that they are extremely well run. And as a matter of fact, if you don't check the numbers, you could get the sense that something's wrong because you never see a long line. And, I've been out there and just felt kind of down. It's like, man, the turnout must be really bad because I'm just not seeing that backup. But then you check the numbers at night and you see that the numbers are up, and it's exactly the way you want it to work during the pandemic. That we still have very high turnout and there's little or no wait, and people are coming in and voting safely. I even saw an older couple who, to the poll workers' credit, they tried to help them in with curbside voting, and they've just refused. They were going to walk in, even though it took them about half a minute for every single step, but they were that determined to make sure they got in there and voted. And I think that's how we all have to be, because as was mentioned before, this is the most important election. And it's not just because there are life or death issues on the ballot in terms of policies, but because of the integrity of our system of democracy is at stake. And we need to make sure that we take that seriously. So along those lines, I think, your question about the differences between city, county, and state, I get it a lot, especially in Charlotte, because we're a large city and because we're not the capital city, because we have a great city council and county commission. There's really not a lot of awareness about what happens in the legislature, what happens at the state level. And, part of it is because there are actually more of us than any other elected body in Charlotte, because we're such a large population center. We try to divide the legislative district so we cover the same amount of people. And so just to give you the context, each district is supposed to have about 80,000 people in it. I have colleagues who represent districts that cover 4 or 5 counties. They can drive 2 hours before they cover 80,000 people. I can drive 10 minutes and hit that number of people. I have, again, colleagues who have 4 or 5 counties, drive 2 hours. There are 3 of us, all from the same part of town in the legislature. That's just how many people we have. And if we all do our part and participate in the census and we get a great, accurate count, we'll get another district here in Charlotte. And so I think that's just generally where you're going to see that population shift. In terms of the breakdown, Larkin can correct me and chime in on it, but the city handles the public safety and infrastructure. The county handles human services and health and our parks, and then the state has a hand in it all and can help the city and the county or make it harder for them. And I think that's frankly the way it breaks down.
No corrections necessary. Brandon nailed it. Not surprising.
Outstanding. Absolutely. So while we're talking about candidates on the ballot, let's talk about detecting misinformation. We're surrounded by information campaigns discrediting candidates that's been happening forever. As we know, not all of it is accurate. So how do we find the right information? How do we find out what's real versus fake news?
Well, yeah. So I think that's becoming, obviously, it's always been a problem. I think it's becoming worse because, various reasons, social media and others. And it's particularly harmful during the pandemic. I've been on the receiving end on several of those misinformation, attack ads, things of that nature, including one that's going around now. And in this environment, because we don't have strong reporting presence in Raleigh to know a lot of the facts. We don't get the benefit of that here in Charlotte. We also don't have as many opportunities to communicate directly with voters. So the main contact voters are getting are through advertising. And when you have outside groups spending unlimited amounts of money to influence elections, they can say whatever they want about you. And unless you have enough money to be able to counteract it, it can be hard to get the right information out there, not to mention what's going on in people's social media posts. So I think, in normal, quote unquote, normal times, the best thing you could do is for groups, like the Urban League and others to host education forums, bring the candidates in, allow people to quiz us, ask us questions, hear straight from us the truth. I think we're fortunate in Charlotte that even though we're a large city, we are a small community, and it's not hard to get to know your elected officials, to get access to us. I think that's frankly, and in Charlotte, we're very fortunate in that respect that for our local candidates, we can do that. It gets harder at the national level, but I think that's critical.
Yeah, let me, I was going to offer a cosign exactly what Brandon said, but you also talk about what I call trusted sources. Mm-hmm. So people have to be aware of the source of information. Random Twitter, random Facebook post, random Instagram, not associated with anybody you know, should be looked up on with healthy suspicion. Healthy suspicion. Trusted sources, whether they are trusted leaders, trusted organizations, trusted elected officials, trusted news organizations, and not that we should take that lock, stock, and barrel, but they are more likely to be accurate and truthful. What the Russians did in 2016 was diabolical. They masked themselves as Black activists on the internet, opened Twitter accounts, pretending to be people. One of those persons was Woke Louisa. She had a Twitter address, @WokeLouisa. She produced hundreds of thousands of posts, had hundreds of thousands of followers. She wasn't a real person. Her entire diatribe was discouraging people from voting. Discouraging people from voting. Woke Louisa is just one of many Russian trolls trafficked in the internet in 2016. And they're at it again. And they're going to intensify their efforts in these last 10 to 12 days, 14 days, with that kind of garbage. So we've got to remind people, caveat emptor, buyer beware, keep your eyes open, be woker than woke, follow trusted sources, and ignore the BS.
Yeah, I'll also chime in, Mark. You make a good point about trusted sources. I mean, a lot of where folks in our community get their information, whether it's news or the radio, their campaigns and radio personalities that you listen to every day. You should think about that. But I also want to talk about the ballot. Brandon, you mentioned earlier all the propaganda that's out there. Mm-hmm. And we want to be clear. When it comes to ballots you receive in the mail, if there are candidates' faces, that's not a ballot. Okay? You have to understand the propaganda in this election is unprecedented. And you have to be very clear on what is good information versus inaccurate information. If there are issues, please, again, that 866 Our Vote is a good resource to ask about ballots. We've heard, and I had to jump on the radio last week to counteract people actually receiving ballots with candidates' faces. Okay? That's just not going to happen. And so you have to know the trusted sources, but also ask the right questions. And that kind of swings back to you, Michael, and all the efforts you all are doing around making certain voters get the right ballot and it's accurate. For
voters that want to research the candidates, I think the best nonpartisan site out there is vote411.org. Vote411.org is put together by the League of Women Voters, which is a nonpartisan organization, and they do a really good job of reaching out to all of us. Brandon's on the ballot this year. I'll be on the ballot next year, reaching out to all of us with the questions about different issues, where we stand. That is information coming straight from the horse's mouth. It is put out and put together in a very easy to use format by a nonpartisan organization. If you don't know about the different candidates, if you've not had a chance to meet them and talk to them yourselves, this is the next best option. And so I'd highly encourage people to check that out.
Larkin, while we're on with you, can you speak on, let's switch gears a bit, let's talk about bonds. When I first started voting years ago, I would go to the ballot and I'd see these bonds and policies that are listed, and I had no idea that they were on, that we'd have to vote on them, what they were about. I know there's a number of people that have that same experience. They're saying to themselves, what's this bond about? What are we voting about? Which neighborhood is being impacted? Tell us about these bond projects? How is it important to the community? How does this impact our lives?
So it's important to the community because it literally are the bonds and the funds that we use to build our city. I won't get too far into the weeds because I know we're limited on time, but I'll give one more website, and that's voteyesforbonds.com. Voteyesforbonds.com. That's where you can find more about the City of Charlotte bonds. This year we've got 3 on there. We've got $102.7 million for streets, $50 million for housing, $44.5 million for neighborhood improvements and investments. On that website, you can see a lot of examples of specific projects that those bonds will fund if passed. It's also important that people note, they might recall last year we had a sales tax on the ballot. This is not a tax. There is not a tax associated with these bonds. Your taxes will not go up if they are passed. Your taxes will not go down if they are not. So this is approving the city to make these expenditures on things that are really critical investments. And I'm proud that we as a city have said these neighborhood improvement bonds, these are going in corridors that have been disinvested communities for generations. These are going in communities of color that local government has not only not been investing in, but has been harming with its policies in generations past. And so these are not just being thrown out of a helicopter haphazardly wherever they land. These are going into the areas where we know that there is investment needed and there has not been investment made. And you can see very detailed outlines on what these dollars will be spent on all 3 of those bonds on voteyesforbonds.com. But I hope that people will, as they have historically in Charlotte, support those and approve those.
If these bonds are not approved, how does that impact the tax dollar?
Well, it doesn't impact any individual in terms of their tax rate or their taxes that they pay. What it does really is set us back in terms of being able to continue being a competitive city in recruiting talent, recruiting companies and jobs. It sets us back in terms of trying to create neighborhoods where people have the opportunity to succeed, the opportunity for upward mobility, which we know that our city has lagged behind in for years. It just sets us back as a city that we're not able to make these investments and make these strategic improvements in our city to stay competitive and stay a great place to live, work, and play.
Let me just say this. I'm so happy Larkin has explained this, because this may be one of the most important things on the ballot. Because what this is all about is spending money to fix up neighborhoods in ways that people will be able to visualize and see. And one of the most important parts of how a city government can be more equitable is where they spend their capital dollars and making sure that neighborhoods are not locked out and left out. So citizens should educate themselves. This is crucial. This is one of the fundamental functions of local governments, and that is to build infrastructure through the issuance of bonds, which allows them to raise money in the capital markets and pay the money back over a long period of time. So this is so important. One of the first things I did when I became mayor of New Orleans is put before the voters one of the largest capital improvement programs in the city's history. 25 years ago, it was 4 times as big as anything, because I knew that I could talk all I wanted about street repairs and housing repairs and fixing up pools and playgrounds for kids. But if I didn't have any resources, all it was a plan on a piece of paper. So this is so crucial, and I encourage voters to learn about it and embrace it and not be confused. The terminology can be confusing, and that's why I think elected officials have to hit the stump and say, don't think of a bond, think about what the bond pays for.
Right.
And it's so far down the ballot. We really need voters to stick out the ballot. It's several pages long, and these are at the very, very end. So don't quit voting until you get to the end of the ballot.
They got to vote. We're encouraging people this time, vote
Top
the
to bottom.
full ballot.
Entire ballot.
The bottom.
So I'm glad
Don't
you
walk out.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Mark. So, we talk about voting the full ballot, and, in the past, we blindly voted all Democrat or all Republican, just up and down. Is there a danger to doing that?
Let me say, I think the most important thing for a person, spend 15 minutes to develop a plan. You can bring a sheet, you can bring a sample ballot, you can bring a list. I used to love watching senior citizens in New Orleans walk into the ballot with a piece of paper that had numbers on it.
Yeah.
Because in New Orleans, all candidates had a ballot number assigned to them. And a lot of them would just write the numbers down.
Right.
And they'd walk in and just vote the numbers. And because they could do it more quickly and more easily. And a lot of times the numbers were easier to see than the names. So everybody needs a way and a tip. The worst thing you can do is just walk in and say, well, I know there's a Senate race. I know there's a governor's race. I mean, I know there's a presidential race, but what about all this other stuff? Well, I didn't know anybody, so I didn't vote for anybody. Please.
That's right.
Don't disempower yourselves in our community by doing that. Spend a minute, just a minute. 60 seconds are in it. And develop a list of who you are going to vote for. And if you don't know, ask somebody you trust.
That's right.
Text them. I was going to vote here where we live. We got the ballot. I saw the school board election. I told my wife, I said, text so-and-so. We need to know, because I'm not familiar with all the names. And I don't want to play eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I want to get, so you go to a trusted person who follows that more closely and say, what do you think? And that's why one of the advantages of voting by mail or voting sometimes early is you have a little bit more time. You don't have the pressure of election day, the lines, but be prepared. Let's ask people to vote the whole ballot. In Black communities, we do a lot of disempowering by ballot fall off.
And the key is not what party is next to somebody's name. It's knowing what they stand for, because I'm unapologetically a Democrat, but neither party is completely filled with wonderful people or completely filled with terrible people. There are good folks and bad folks in both parties. And I might not cross party lines all that often anymore, or not recently, but that doesn't mean that every Democrat is somebody worth your vote in my case, or as some people might think, no Democrat is worth their vote, and neither is true. And so the key is educating yourself on the person, not the party.
I tell people about voting. I've had young people say, I don't like this one. I don't like any of them. I said, this is not a Valentine's Day exercise.
Right.
This is a chess move.
Harm
Vote for the
reduction.
person that best aligns with you, not perfectly aligns, best aligns with you. And if you want to be cynical, vote for the lesser of two evils.
I love that. I love that, Mark. I'm going to ask 2 more questions, and then I'll ask everyone to just give us some final thoughts here. We're running against time here, and Doesn't look like we've got many questions because I think you all are just doing a fantastic job of being thorough in your explanations. So thank you. Michael, I wanted to give you some rest there. My question in terms of poll workers, WCNC reported that Mecklenburg County has one poll worker for every 286 registered voters. Cleveland County has one for 186. Gaston County has one for every 211 registered voters. Is that typical? Are we in a good space with that? Any concerns about that that difference there?
No, we feel that we're in great shape. To be honest with you, we have a database of about 5,000 people that we have worked over the past 3 or 4 years recruiting poll workers. None of those other counties also either have 33 early voting sites. That makes all the difference in the world. I fully expect that 60% of our voters will vote early at one of my early voting sites. And if that's the case, I'll have another 20 or 25% vote on by mail with 125,000 people. I'm only going to have about 100,000 people show up on election day period. We've got this. This is what we were expecting, and this is what we're planning for. We have plenty of people, plenty of staff, and ours are quite well-trained folks.
Outstanding. And I think you mentioned we've got today we had 24,000 voters, correct?
Exactly.
In Mecklenburg
Most
County.
of those counties won't vote 24,000 people. So we did it today with probably 15 or 1,600 workers. Is what we use a day.
For that first time voter, driver's license is not needed. Talk about that for the first time voter.
Right. If you're registered already, we have already verified all your information here at our office. All you need to do in North Carolina is walk in and state your name and your address. If you're already registered, we'll look you up in the poll books. We'll look you up on a computer, and then we'll vote you. If you have not registered yet, and you do want to walk in and do same-day voter registration at one of our early voting sites, North Carolina allows that. And you will need some sort of identification to prove your residency in that purpose. So you would want to show me your driver's license. But if you've already registered, don't worry about it. You are set. All you're going to walk in and do is state your name and address. We're going to look you up, and we're going to get you voting.
Fantastic. I'm so proud of Charlotte and the collective collaborative effort that Bojangles Arena, the Hornets Arena, high schools, how we've all just pulled in and offered our locations as polling sites. Unprecedented. I haven't seen that in my short lifetime. Your thoughts on that, Michael?
It is amazing. The partnerships that we have with the Charlotte Hornets and the Spectrum Center, the Bank of America Stadium and the Carolina Panthers. These groups came to us. We didn't go ask them. They came to us and said, hey, we want to be part of this community. It's our civic responsibility to be part of this community. We want to make it better. I tell you right now, I've never seen so much from the NBA and the NFL on how much they are promoting voting in the election this year. We should all be proud of them. And I've got like you said, the local Bojangles Arena, the Boplex is what they call it. Came right out and said, yes, use our space. We will be glad to have you here. The high schools, we sat down in a planning session and said, what's the best way we can keep people 6 feet socially distanced? Well, high schools are not in session right now. Schools are learning at home right now. It's still in Mecklenburg County. They're not going back until later this year. Great place to use. I can put 15, 20 express vote panels in there, and we will be able to take care of all the voters that way. So yes, the community here is pitching in and making sure. I applaud the voters for respecting the 6 feet social distancing, for washing their hands, wearing the mask. All of these things that everybody wants to keep everybody else safe. That's what we should be doing. We should be worrying about taking care of everybody else too in this whole process.
Well said. I'm going to plug in our event, the National Urban League and the Urban League of the Central Carolinas. We're going to have a early voting event at West Charlotte High School on the 31st. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a fantastic day on Halloween from 12 to 3 p.m. Closing remarks from all of you, starting with Brandon, please.
All right. Well, thank you, and thank you, the Urban League, and everyone for having us and putting this together. I'll just close with what we've already said, which is, we're 13 days away. We're already in the midst of it, but we're 13 days away from the most important election of our lifetime. And it's the most important election, not just because there are critical issues on the ballot, issues of healthcare, education, closing disparities. There are a number of issues on the ballot, but it's the most important election because our democracy itself is actually on the ballot. You've already heard about the repeated efforts to try to interfere in our election, to cause confusion, to discourage people, but we need to be like that couple I talked about earlier who refused to be kept away from the polls, who made their effort to get in and vote. We need to do everything we can. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Michael Dickerson and his staff for a very, very well-run election and keeping everyone safe. I want to thank everyone who's already voted. I love seeing the Facebook posts with the pins and people saying that they did their civic duty. I'll be a little greedy and say that step one. Step two is make sure your family and everybody you know and all your cousins and everybody has already voted. Then you would have done your civic duty. So I just appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, and I hope everyone stays safe.
Larkin?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's as important as it's ever been, and it's always important. I hope that the enthusiasm to get out and vote is not just in November every 4 years, but that it's twice a year, every year, because there is an election in this community every year, and we don't see this level of participation. So we need to see it all the time, but we need to see it this year more than ever. Whatever you have to do, borrow the mayor's unicycle, get out there and vote. There's no excuse. People like Michael have made it easy. They've made it safe. And they've made sure that your vote will count. It will have been worth your while to get out there and do that. So there is no excuse.
Michael?
Make sure you do it.
Thank you very much for having me on the program. Great program, Teddy. Great seeing you again, my friend. But please keep in mind, we are administrators of this process. We do not write the rules. We do not design the rules. We actually just administer the rules. We're not here to get one side to win or the other side to win. We have no, what you say, dog in the fight. I am very fortunate in this great county I live in that the city of Charlotte and the county have always funded my budget 100%. I have never asked and never had any issues. So there's never been a need, and nobody in my staff cares if you're a Democrat or a Republican or an unaffiliated. We just want to get out and take care of your vote and make sure that you're safe, you're secure, and you keep everybody around you safe and secure. So vote and practice the 3 W's.
Thank you. Teddy?
So I just want to thank everyone for the panel, for giving of your time. I'm going to focus, though, my last couple of comments on the phrase protest to power. We started this campaign a couple of months ago, and people should know that power is yours when you vote. And yes, it is important that every vote counts. We're doing a great job in Mecklenburg County and many counties in North Carolina. But we want to make certain that once your vote is cast, you hold all of these elected officials accountable. That is your power. We have a lot of issues in Charlotte. We talk about jobs and education and housing and healthcare and getting past these pandemics. And the first step is voting, but the second is giving accountability and making sure that these policies get changed and you stay engaged. And the Urban League of Central Carolinas will always be your trusted source to help you do that here in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area.
Mark?
Hey, let me just say thank you to everyone and a special thanks to you, Teddy McDaniel, for bringing the leadership of the Urban League of Central Carolinas to this fight of Reclaim Your Vote, Protest the Power. We have work to do. Let's run to the tape. Let's work until the polls are closed on Tuesday, November the 3rd. Let's not stop. We got a lot of work to do. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I want to thank you all for joining, for taking time away from your families to be on this call. Thank you so much for the fight that you're putting into this whole process up until November 3rd and beyond, Michael. So thank you all. And we've got the census coming up after that. So thank you for all that. You can find more information about Reclaim Your Vote at reclaimyourvote.com. That's our campaign that we've been pushing nationwide. Go ahead, Teddy.
So reclaimyourvote.org.
.org, excuse me, and reclaimyourvote.org. And so thank you again. Thank you all for joining, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Take care.